Hello everyone, I am Arima Khanam and welcome back to Balajee online classes. Today I am here to teach you lesson number 4 and 5 of your everyday English grammar and composition. So your fourth chapter is auxiliary verbs and your fifth chapter is modals. So today we will be studying about auxiliary verbs as well as modals. In the chapter auxiliary verbs, we will be studying about the functions of auxiliary verbs. We will be studying about the primary auxiliary verbs be, have, do, about the modal auxiliary verbs and about the auxiliary verbs which are similar to modals in functions. And we will be studying about the uses of can, could, may and might, the uses of shall and will, the uses of should and would, about modals in conditional sentences. So first and foremost thing is that to start these two chapters which are interconnected, we need to know the concept of verbs. What are verbs? Verbs क्या होते हैं? Verbs are words that tells what the subject in a sentence is, what it does and what it possesses. कि सब्जेक्ट जो सेंटेंस में यूज हुआ है वो क्या है, वो क्या करता है और वो क्या पोजेस करता है. व्हाट थिंग्स बिलोंग्स टू दैट पर्सन, द सब्जेक्ट. You already have seen my video related to verbs. If you did not see, do watch it before you start this chapter, because if you don't know the concept of verbs, you will not understand anything related to this. What are helping verbs, what are main verbs, what are modals, what are linking verbs, what are the complements. You will not understand anything because they are the category of verbs. They come under the category of verbs. So you need to know the complete concept of verbs, because a sentence cannot be framed without a verb. It is mandatory to use a verb in a sentence. A sentence cannot be completed without a verb, and you should know the concept of subject-verb agreement, that the subject should agree with the verb. If the subject is plural, the verb will also be plural, and if the subject is singular, the verb will also be singular. You should know what are regular verbs, what are irregular verbs. How do we write regular verbs and how do we write irregular verbs? You need to practice and you need to know what are they. So let's get started. Let's know what are the functions of auxiliary verbs. Students, I would like to tell you what is auxiliary verbs. It is also called helping verbs. आप लोग अपनी जूनियर क्लासेस में इसे हेल्पिंग वर्ब्स कहा करते थे, इसे हम ऑक्सिलरी वर्ब्स भी कहते हैं. In this, we will study the functions of auxiliary verbs. What are the different types of functions of auxiliary verbs or helping verbs? I'll read some examples. First one is Tina had taken the shortcut yet she was late. So there are two types of verbs used in a sentence. The next one is the little child was crying inconsolably. So in this also there are two types of verbs used in a sentence. In the first sentence, had taken. Had is the helping verb and the other one, taken, is the main verb. In the next sentence, the little child was crying inconsolably. Was crying, was is the helping or the auxiliary verb and the main verb is crying. So I hope you understood the concept of this. And now you should know that there are different forms of verbs. Before you start this chapter, you should also know that there are different forms of verbs. The base form of the verb, the ing form of the verb, the past tense form of the verb, the past participle form of verb and to infinity. For example, the base form of the verb is laugh. So what is the ing form of laugh? It will be laughing. And the past tense of laugh is laughed, and past participle is also laughed, and to infinitive is to laugh. As we see, these verbs have been used with the main verbs to make tenses passive forms, questions and negative. The words like had, was, must, do, as we have used above in your book, it is given the examples which I read. I just read two examples. So there are verbs like had, was, must, do. These are all auxiliary verbs. So these verbs have been used with the main verbs to make tenses passive forms, questions or negative. Auxiliary verbs have no meaning on their own. They do not have any meaning on their own. They are necessary because they help the main verb. They are necessary when we are writing like has, have, is, am. If these words are used alone in a sentence, then they are considered as main verb. But auxiliary verbs do not have any meaning. They help the main verb, that's why they are used in a sentence and to form the grammatical structure of the sentence, but they do not tell us very much alone. They cannot be used, so they do not tell much about themselves. Auxiliary verbs, however, have several very important functions. So I will tell you what are the important functions of auxiliary verbs. They are used to form questions. Auxiliary verbs change places with the subject to form questions. For example, this is taking too long. Is this taking too long? You all know how to change affirmative sentence to question. I can help you. Can you help me? I can. The helping verb is can and then help is the main verb. So what do? You will write the helping verb in the beginning of the sentence, then you will write the subject and then the main verb, and the rest of the thing will be same and the question will be framed. To form short answers, to write short answers, these types of helping verbs are used. For example, can you help me clean this room? So what is the answer? Yes, I can. Will you be here on time? Yes, I will. So these are the words that are used to frame short answers. To avoid repetition, we use these types of auxiliary verbs. We use auxiliary verbs to avoid repetition. It is written in the book. For example, bring all that you can. If you haven't any idea about the theft, who has? Okay, so in the next one, to form question tags. Question tag you will be studying, you have studied in your previous class in 6th standard and in 7th as well. So you all know how to write question tags at the end of the sentence. For example, this is a great book, isn't it? Can you swim? Can't you? If the sentence is positive, if can is used, is used, what do? You just write not with it or contraction of the verb and not after that and put a question mark and it becomes a question tag. So in this chapter we will be studying about the auxiliary verbs fall into 3 basic groups. They are categorized. First one is primary or the main auxiliary verbs. The next one is modal or modal auxiliary verbs, and the last one is other auxiliary verbs with the characteristics of modals. That means there are other auxiliary verbs also which functions as modals. So we'll be studying about the primary one, the be form, have form and the do form. Be form you all know is am, is, are, was, were, been, and have form has, have, had. Has is for singular, have for plural and had for past. And do, how do you use do? So be form is, be is used with ing forms of the main verb to form continuous tense. For example, she is playing basketball in the garden, in the present form. And he was running after the thief, past continuous. Then the verb be plus past participle is used to form the passive. They are also used to form passives. For example, the shop was closed. The curtains are drawn at night. Have form, the auxiliary have can be used to form perfect tenses. You all know how to frame perfect tenses and perfect tense sentences. We use have forms. Out the primary one, the be form, have form and the do form. Be form you all know is Am, is, are, was, were, been, being. And have form, has, have, had. Has is for singular, have for plural, and had for past. And do. How do you use do? So be is used with ing forms of the main verb to form continuous tense. For example, she is playing basketball in the garden, in the present form. And he was running after the thief, past continuous. Then the verb be plus past participle is used to form the passive. They are also used to form passives. For example, the shop was closed. The curtains are drawn at night. Have form, the auxiliary have can be used to form perfect tenses. You all know how to frame perfect tenses and perfect tense sentences. We use have forms, has for singular, have for plural, and had for the past. For example, I'll read some examples also. She has never worked before. She is the single subject, that's why has we are using. And in the next sentence, they have written they had lived in Delhi for a long time. Had is used because it is in the past form. The next one is given, he does not dance very well. She did not obey her mother. Oh, I have come to the next portion, that is the do form. The auxiliary do can be used to form negative of the simple present and past tense. You all know how to change affirmative sentence into negative. What do? You just add not after the helping verb or auxiliary verb and the sentence becomes negative. As I read this example, he does not dance very well. He does dance very well or he does not. So he dances very well. So what do? Dances is the simple present. So you will write does as the subject is single, and after the helping verb you will add not with it and it will become negative. The next one is do is used to form questions in the simple present and past forms. Okay, so do is also used to form questions. I want some tea. How do you frame the question? Do you want some tea? I like the party. Did you like the party? The next one is when we use question words to form questions in the simple present or past, the auxiliary do comes after the question word. The main verb comes after the subject and is always in its base form. For example, Karan said he was well. What did Karan say? So we used does, do. You all know does is used for singular subject, do for plural subject, and did when the verb is past tense, so we will use did with it, and then the base form of the verb we'll use. And to write this way, to write the questions, if it is said, Karan said he was well, said is past tense, so we will use did, a form of do. So I hope you understood this. Now we'll study about modals. What are modals? The words can, could, shall, should, will, would, may, might, and must are modals. You should remember that can, could, may, might, will, would, shall, should, and must are the modals. We already know that modals are auxiliary verbs. They are helping verbs. They are used before the main verb to express ability, possibility, certainty, suggestions, permission, obligation, etc. However, in many ways they are different from the primary auxiliary verbs. They are different from primary auxiliary verbs. You all know what are primary auxiliary verbs: the be form, the have form, and the do form. They are different from them. So let's know what are modal auxiliary verbs and what's their function. Modal verbs cannot stand on their own. That means they cannot be written alone in a sentence. They need the main verb in it. For example, Mona can write well. So you can see Mona can is the modal or the auxiliary verb, and write is the main verb. Preeti must leave now. Can you write like this? Preeti must now. Will it make any sense? No, it won't make any sense. So there must be a main verb with the modals. The next one is, unlike the primary auxiliaries, modals do not change according to the subject and number. They do not change according to the numbers or the subject. This means what we do not add s to modals when the subject is in the third person singular. If the subject is singular or plural, the modals does not change, though they are verbs, but they do not change their form. They will be written as it is. Like Shanu is single person, will write should leave now. Kapil will take the metro. The next one is, modal verbs do not change with the change in tense. If the tense is changed, the modals will not change. This means that the modals verbs do not have ed forms. They do not have the ed forms, and ed is not added in the verb. For some modals do have past tense forms. However, these forms have their own independent uses. For example, can, could, may, might, will, would, shall, should. I can swim. I could swim as a child. We would sit and talk for hours together. Modals do not have non-finite forms. They do not have non-finite forms. For example, I can sing, I canning. That means non-finite by adding ing to it. We cannot do that. Like with should, we will not add ing, or with can, we will not add ing. So we cannot say I canning sing or I shoulding write. We cannot say like that. I must pay my taxes. To must. I too must pay my taxes. You cannot write that way. So the next one is, two or more modals cannot be strung together. They cannot be written together. Two or more modals. I might go to Goa next week. I might will go to Goa next week. You cannot write this way. You cannot use two helping verbs like one auxiliary, primary auxiliary or anything, or with that you are using a modal. That is not possible. We could take the evening bus. We could may take the evening bus. This is wrong. The next one is in verb phrases. When the main verb is preceded by auxiliary verbs, the modal verbs comes first. In verb phrases, what happens when the main verb is preceded by auxiliary verbs? Main verb precedes the auxiliary verbs. What happens? Modal comes first before any other auxiliary verb and main verb. Let's read an example. Priya may have taken the books. So you can see may is the modal and it is used first. They are not on the table. They must have been waiting for us. Must is the modal and it is used first. Come to the next page, page number 32. That is, we form negative sentences by adding not after the modals. So what do we do? To change the sentence into negative, we add not after the modals. For example, you must not smoke. You must not write. Okay. In questions, the modal verbs comes before the subject. In questions, modal verbs comes before the subject. Subject से पहले आते हैं modals. Modal verbs can also form short answers on their own. For example, they can take the last bus. Okay. Can they take the last bus? Can is the modal, they is the subject. As I told, can the modal is used before the subject, and to write short answers like yes, they can. The last one is modals can be used to avoid repetition. They are used to avoid repetition. Repeat बार बार जो होता है उसे avoid करने के लिए हम modals use करते हैं. Meera can play the piano. So can Nikhil. They won't reach on time. Neither will the children. So I hope you understood this much portion. And now I will tell you there are other auxiliary verbs with the characteristics of modals. That is given on page number 28. There are other helping verbs also जो modals का काम करते हैं. I'll read few examples. With the characteristics of modals. that is given on page number 28. There are other helping verbs also जो models का काम करते हैं. I'll read few examples. I will be able to finish this today. Will be able. Okay. Karan had to prepare. We needn't leave so early. In these sentences, the italicized, the words you can see, page number 28, words are models in meaning, but they do not always behave like models. वो हैं models, but they do not behave models always. Such phrases are called semi-models. इन type के phrases को, sentences को हम semi-models कहते हैं, that means half models. Some of these are be about, be able to, be likely to, had better, have to, ought to, used to, need to, dare and would rather. These are the semi-models. There are rules also given. How do we use these types of models on page number 29. We see the auxiliaries are made up of two or more separate words followed by two finite infinitive or a bare infinitive. Sheila is likely to stay. To stay is in a infinitive with her mother. Rashi wouldn't dare disobey me. Unlike models, these often change their form according to the subject and may have a full range of tenses. So, like models, they also change their forms according to the subject. For example, we were able to get in to see the film. The next one is to form the negative not is attached to the auxiliary verbs that comes after the subject. As you all know, to form negative sentences, what do? We attach to the auxiliary verbs that comes after the subject and not to the semi-models phrase. For example, we weren't able to get the tickets for the trip. To form questions बनाने के लिए हम लोग ये verbs को पहले लिखते हैं या contraction लिखते हैं उनका और not add करते हैं and after that the subject and then the verb and then rest of the thing will be same. That's it in this. And now I will tell you the concept of can, could, may, might. How do we use can? Can is used to express ability or possibility. Can use किया जाता है ability बताने के लिए कि मैं ये काम कर सकता हूँ और possibility बताता है कि ये possible है, ये काम हो सकता है. For example, Ratish can cook well. A holiday trip can be expensive. Could expresses ability or possibility in the past. Same way, could is used ability or possibility in the past, यानी कि जो हो चुका है. Then to talk about future possibility, might or could are used and they are often synonyms. It could rain tonight. We might have an extra class tomorrow. Now to suggest a choice or an option, we use could. कोई choice हम देते हैं या option देते हैं तो हम could का use करते हैं. Though the informal can is also used for this purpose. Informal होता है can क्योंकि मैं आपको अक्सर बताती हूँ कि आप अपनी टीचर से कभी ये नहीं कह सकते can I come in? You will say may I come in. Okay, so it is informal way to say that. We could go and see a movie. I could become an architect. We can go by train. To give instructions or permission or to ask for permission, both may and can are used. कोई भी instruction देने के लिए या permission लेने के लिए हम can और may का use करते हैं. You all know the where to use can and where to use may. ठीक है, मैंने आपको ये already बताया हुआ है. Can जब आप अपने छोटों से बात करते हैं, you can ask, if you are asking or taking permission, you can say, can I take your pencil? Can I lend your bag today? But अगर आप अपने teacher से या अपने elder person से बात करते हैं तो आप उनसे may करके question frame करेंगे और उनसे पूछेंगे. ठीक है. Can and could are used to ask about present or future possibility. Future और present possibilities के बारे में बताते हैं. जैसे when can we get the results? Could she become the new head girl? So ये present और future की possibilities बता रहे हैं. Now I will tell you the way to use shall and will. We may, for example, I'll read some examples. They will take the train to Pune tomorrow. We shall reach Mumbai at 4 p.m. Traditional grammar prescribes that shall is to be used with the first person subject I and we. तो हम लोग usually shall use नहीं करते. I will come tomorrow, I will go here and we will go there. हम लोग को shall use करना चाहिए उसके साथ, I और we के साथ. Will is also not wrong, but shall is more apt. However, in contemporary English, this rule is ignored and will is used with the all types of subjects. ठीक है? Will and shall are used to show determination or a promise and sometimes a threat. Will और shall क्या है? कोई promise जब हम करते हैं तब करते हैं, या किसी को threaten करते हैं तब हम इसका use करते हैं. जैसे I will score well in the test, or I will get you a new bike for your birthday. The next one is will is used to make request or to ask a favor. जब हम किसी से कोई request करते हैं या किसी से favor मांगते हैं तो हम will का use करते हैं. जैसे will you lend me your book, or will you shut the door please, this way. Often will is used to express impatience or anger. We also use must in similar situations, but it is more like a rhetoric questions. तो हम लोग will का कब यूज करते हैं? जब हम impatient होते हैं या angry होते हैं. हम लोग उसकी जगह पर must का भी यूज कर सकते हैं. Will you stop fighting? Will this journey ever end? Must you always fight? This way also you can say. Will is also used to ask for information. जब आपको किसी कोई टाइप की information लेनी होती है किसी से तो आप will का यूज करते हो. जैसे will we have school tomorrow? You are asking something, you are getting an information from someone, you want to get an information, that's why you are framing this sort of question. Will the solar eclipse be visible in Nasik? So this way, both will and shall are used to ask about an option in WH questions. You all know what are WH? How, when, where, why, what, who, whom. These are all WH words. For example, who will clean the car? When shall we meet again? When we ask about a preference or make a polite offer, जब हम कोई polite offer करते हैं या preference लेते हैं, we use shall, should, we also used here. For example, shall I switch off the lights? Shall we go home? Should we take the shortcut? This way you use shall and will. Now comes should and would. What happens? Should and would are actually the past form of shall and will. Should is used to talk of an obligation or give advice. In this sense, it is synonym with ought to. ठीक है? Must. Must is also used to express obligation, though it is somewhat stronger than should. For example, you should apologize for your behavior. We should fulfill our duties and our rights will follow. So, other examples are also given. You can read that. The next point is when we want to ask for advice or a suggestion or ask if an obligation exists, we use should in this question. When we want to ask for advice, जब हम किसी से advice लेते हैं या किसी का suggestion लेते हैं तब हम should का use करते हैं. Should I buy this pair of shoes? या should I leave a tip? इस तरह से जब हम किसी का suggestion लेते हैं तो हम should का use करते हैं. Would is used to talk about actions or habits in the past. Would हम तब यूज करते हैं जब हम कोई एक्शन या हैबिट के बारे में बात कर रहे हो, दैट इज डन इन द पास्ट. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इन कोचिन वी वुड वॉक along the beach every night. Okay, now next is would is used to make polite request or offer. Would हम तब भी यूज करते हैं जब हम कोई रिक्वेस्ट करते हैं या पोलाइट ऑफर करते हैं किसी को कुछ भी. I would like some ice cream please, या would you like anything else. This way you can make a polite request. When we want to express a wish, would or could is used. जब हमें कोई wish करनी होती है तो हम would और could का use करते हैं. जैसे I wish they would listen. I wish I could come to your party. Then to express probability or certainty, must is used. कोई probability या possibility express करना होता है तो must का use करते हैं. जैसे कि They left early. They must have reached by now. The new phone must cost a lot of money. The next one is we use must or should to express obligation in YH question, WH question. जब हम कोई obligation बताते हैं या express करते हैं कोई obligation तो WH question words हम लोग use करते हैं, like when must we reach, how much money must I take. This way you will frame questions by using WH question words. Now what are the conditions? Model in conditional sentences. Models are used in conditional sentences. A conditional sentence is what? It is usually has an if clause and a main clause. The model is used in the main clause. For example, we use could, would to talk of situation that may be unreal or cannot be fulfilled. For example, if I had time, I could go to the gym. If I had come to Pune, we could have met. This way you will write. Sometimes we form probable condition with should. कोई probable condition होती है तो उसके साथ हम should का use करते हैं, जैसे कि should he trouble you, please tell me. If he troubles you, then tell me, do inform about that. Should they reach early, ask them to wait. So that's it in this lesson. I hope you have understood very well, but I suggest again, before seeing my video or doing this lesson, the exercises of these two lessons, you need to see my video which I have uploaded on the topic verbs. Please उसे आप लोग देख लीजिएगा, because to know what are auxiliary verbs and models, you should know the concept of verbs. So that's it in this lesson. Take care of yourself and wait for my next video. Bye bye.